So Massachusetts over the years has had its share of absolutely insane criminal cases, high profile, lower profile, everything. And it doesn't matter how old you are, older, younger, if you're from Massachusetts or even just New England in general, you know exactly who this little girl was. This is Bella Bond, formerly known as Baby Doe. And this is the story of one of the wildest criminal cases in Massachusetts history. Strap in, this is a deep one. Story all starts with the body of Bella Bond found inside a plastic garbage bag on the shoreline of Deer Island near Boston. It's in Winthrop, actually. Authorities originally estimated that the girl had died within days of her discovery. Later developments in the case have suggested that Bella's body had been hidden in a fridge for as long as a month before it was deposited. And because to this point she had decomposed to a certain extent, it was difficult to identify her at first. The initial autopsy conducted on July 3rd did not conclude what had caused her death. While authorities suspected foul play as a factor in the case, no signs of obvious injury had been found on the remains. Tests were later conducted to find any toxins, drugs, or alcohol present in the body as possible explanation for the death. And they tested her for everything and couldn't come up with anything. Everything kept coming up zero. It's then that they began to test the clothing that she was wearing when she was found. Based on the size of the clothing she was wearing when she was found, they determined that she was about 3 years old. This is where the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children steps in and digitally reconstructed the face of the child after preceding attempts to identify the body had failed. Now at this point they go through leaps and bounds of DNA testing, trying to find anything to trace this girl to anywhere, get any lead on who she might be. They didn't know who she was for weeks. The fact that no tips from relatives with information about the child had been reported supported the idea that family members were involved with the disposal of the body and possibly with her death. And as somebody that grew up in Massachusetts and was in their mid-20s at this time, let me tell you something right now. This case, this story, was everywhere. I mean, everybody on the friggin' planet was talking about this. Who she might be, where'd she come from, who the parents were, everything. People just could not stop talking about this. You were glued to the story at every waking second. There was a 24-hour hotline set up. 84 billboards, including digital signs donated by Clear Channel, were also placed across the state of Massachusetts. Again, this story, this case, this girl's face were everywhere. 2 months go by and they finally identified this child as Bella Nevaeh Amoroso Bond on September 18th of 2015. The way they even got this lead was insane. The sister of one of Rochelle Bond, Baby Doe's mother's neighbors, reported to police a link between Bond and Baby Doe. Apparently, this neighbor had noticed that Bella was absent from the household and confronted Rochelle D. Bond and her boyfriend, Michael P. McCarthy, to which they said that the girl got taken away by the DCF, which obviously didn't happen. This neighbor noticed that the baby wasn't at the house anymore and saw her toys being disposed of. Bella's father, this guy Joe Amoroso, who never actually met her, not Joe Amoroso, stated he didn't think that Rochelle would have anything to do with the baby's death. However, her mother definitely thought she had something to do with it. Why? Because she knew this kid, the guy she was dating, Mike McCarthy, was a dirtbag. Now, Rochelle Bond, Bella Bond's mother, was known as a habitual drug user, had 2 other kids who had been removed from her custody. She also been arrested multiple times in the past for other crimes, including sex work. She was a hooker and had a drug problem. And in these stories, what's the common theme? The system fails somewhere. Police commented that they had dealt with complaints that she was neglecting her daughter and had had 4 separate encounters with Bond. Story gets wilder. How much wild? Her grandmother didn't even know she was born. DCF also responded to 2 neglect complaints regarding Bella. Both cases were closed. Police eventually charged Mike McCarthy, Rochelle Bond's boyfriend, with the baby's death. They also charged her with being an accessory to the crime. While the cause of the baby's death does remain unknown, Rochelle Bond alleged that McCarthy had punched the toddler in the stomach multiple times after claiming that Bella was a demon and that he was the sole perpetrator of the unaliving. This supposedly happened while he was trying to calm the baby down to get her to go to sleep. It was then that the baby's body was concealed in a garbage bag and placed in the refrigerator. Sad part is, everybody knew that this Mike McCarthy dude was an absolute slime ball, and I'm being polite here. His friends warned her about him. He was heavily researching topics such as demons and satanic rituals. He also apparently believed he had the ability to expunge demons from a residence, like legit the lady from Poltergeist. McCarthy eventually gets charged with first-degree murder. The judge allowed the jury to consider lesser charges of second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. On June 16, 2017, the jury returned a guilty verdict of second-degree murder, and 2 days later he was sentenced to life imprisonment. He'll be eligible for parole in 2037. So yes, did the DCF fail Bella Bond? Absolutely. So did her mother and this apparent psychopath. We just hear stories like this way too often where the system just fails children like this in situations like this, and you gotta think that this kind of thing could have been prevented if she got to a safer place where she was loved and appreciated as she should have been. But yeah, wow.